Welcome back to the Football League Paper podcast. My name is Matt Badcock. I'm joined by our editor, John Lyons, and chief writer, Chris Dunlavy. Chaps, we had a week off. Welcome back.
I'm embarrassed.
Sorry for the lack of a episode last week. I think myself and Chris particularly was struck down by half-term itis and having a day off to look after little ones. John sort of managed to escape a little bit and navigate different ways around. But up to our eyeballs in half-term fun and activities, but back and ready to talk about all things EFL. I think unfortunately, as a Sheffield Wednesday fan, there's only one place that we unfortunately have to start. And I sort of feel like I'm going to just hand it straight over to you, Chris, first of all. Sheffield Wednesday, the inevitable, confirmed on Sunday lunchtime, and relegated to League One, something that has quite literally been on the card since before a ball was kicked this season.
Yeah, well, it has, hasn't it? We've spoken about it on this podcast and privately loads of times. I mean, it was, you knew, didn't you, in the summer when the financial problems were mounting and the wages weren't getting paid and they weren't signing any players. I mean, it was obvious from the outset that they were going down. Even so, I think even the most pessimistic amongst you probably wouldn't have said it would happen in February. That's definitely.
I also didn't think there'd be this many injuries though either.
Yeah, this is true. Well, though, I guess if you've got no players, you've got such a thin squad, it's probably going to happen, isn't it? But
everyone's getting hammered for having to play so many games, yeah. So all their bodies are getting hammered, but no, maybe not February.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's probably. I mean, if you think it's going to be a record that stands, potentially for decades, hundreds of years, you never know. I mean, it's so historically early, but yeah, I mean, it's just everything that's conspired against them this season, and like the fact they've gone, they went down on Sunday with a 2-1 defeat at Bramall Lane, and you could see that sort of fixture as well closing in, couldn't you? For Sheffield Wednesday, you could see it coming sort of a fortnight, 3 weeks ago. It all just felt fated that they would get relegated at Bramall Lane and have to suffer sort of like one last indignity in a season that's been full of them. So yeah, it's just been like an awful season where it's one thing after another, and it's sort of I've spent 10 years. Well, maybe not the first ones, but I've spent a long time criticising Defon Chansiri and the way he ran the club, and it's pretty much impossible to get away from laying it at his door. It's all happened on his watch, and ultimately it's all come home to roost.
Yeah, I think, John, that's the thing, isn't it? The Sheffield United fans may sort of want to, be enjoying the moment and saying that they were the ones who relegated Sheffield Wednesday, but actually, that's probably not really the case, is it? It's this was going to happen anyway, and as Chris says, one person really to blame who shouldn't be kind of forgotten. And I think, we talk about this being the earliest relegation and all that kind of stuff. I think this needs the biggest footnote in history as well at the bottom of any of these record books that actually explains this situation, because it is unusual from that point of view as well. It needs context, doesn't it?
I mean, if you deducted 18 points during the season, it's obviously going to have a massive impact. And obviously, as soon as last summer came around, and obviously there were players leaving and the squad was decimated, obviously the writing was on the wall. So I think it's a case now of they need to get this sort of takeover completed, and then they need to start looking towards putting a squad out that can compete well in League One next season. So it's been a bit of a nightmare situation. Honestly, going down at Sheffield United probably sort of put the icing on the cake. Though to be fair, at least they did give it a good go on Sunday, and obviously at the start it looked as though they might get obliterated, but they kept going and fighting away till the end, and gave it a good go.
Yeah, I think the cake is giving the worst food poisoning anyone's ever had. It's I think yes. As Chris says, you could kind of see it coming a couple of weeks out. It just felt like it was always going to happen this way. The injuries, obviously, I think Liam Cooper's going to be out now as well for a little bit. Deshaun Bernard's been out injured all year. Most of the year. Domai Orford's out. Max Lowe's out. So, the senior players that kind of have still been there have also been injured. I think, 7 goalkeepers, although, some of that sort of, players coming on. But, the injuries, you're getting keepers coming on loan and getting injured. How many times does that sort of happen? Pierce Charles has been injured twice. And it's just, and I think it's kind of, it's trying to remind everybody that actually there's these massive reasons for it. But one thing I was sort of kind of saying earlier, and as you say, the takeover is obviously still going through, and how long that's going to take, and that's the concern, is when does that get done, and do new ownership, what are they then able to do or not do when they first take over, and does that kind of all get ratified? But one sort of piece of positivity that I'm sort of holding on to a little bit is that tomorrow night Sheffield Wednesday go to Norwich, and when I checked earlier, there were 32 tickets available in that away end, almost a sold out away end in Norfolk on a Wednesday night, just after you've been relegated, in February with 13 games to go. And that shows to me that Sheffield Wednesday will have the great foundation to come back from, because our fan base is just so good. You could forgive a lot of people for knocking that one on the head and not bothering, but Sheffield Wednesday fans will never sort of cease to amaze you. So that's kind of one positive I'm personally taking from it. Chris,
sorry, I was going to say we've got a column with Guy Branston in the paper this week, and obviously he's a former Sheffield Wednesday player himself, and still has a lot of affection for the club. And one of the things he says is sort of, which might be controversial, really, but I mean, I think he sees it as a chance for a reset, and it's a chance to, in a way that the club's almost been sort of living a lie for so many years and operating above its means. And it's a chance to sort of go down and get the costs down and start running the club sort of, as much as there used to be a Premier League club, sort of forgetting about those aspirations for a while and stripping everything back and kind of starting to build the club back up literally from the ground. So I don't know how you feel about that, but
yeah, I think it needs it. I think that's been the big problem. I think that's come out in this administration, is that there's talk of when the administrators first came in, they were having to buy the staff were working on old laptops that couldn't have certain updates. They didn't have decent internet and sort of fiber optic internet throughout the stadium and all that kind of thing. There's been neglect across the board for such a long period of time. There's been all these sort of false dawns, and kind of obviously this is not the first time the club's been down to League One. It's taken 2 years to get back each time. It kind of, even last time after the promotion back into League One, and then obviously Darren Moore was obviously abruptly dismissed not long after, and then that was kind of like that. Oh yeah, this is still Sheffield Wednesday in the way that the club is being run for the last 10 years. That is not going to change just because we took 46,000 fans to Wembley and had a great day out and all that kind of thing. There is sort of kind of been, for such a long time, no structure, no, lots of obviously clearly good people working around the club, and you hear all these kind of stories down the years of people just not being able to kind of get stuff done. And I think one of the hard things as a Sheffield Wednesday fan is kind of like, rightly or wrongly, you look at other clubs like Bournemouth's and Brighton's, and obviously these clubs have spent lots of money and had real investment to kind of get there, but you're looking at a lot of clubs kind of come past and then keep going, and we're just doing this up and down, up and down, up and down. And that's one of the hard kind of things to sort of take. It's been 26 years, 25 years out of the Premier League.
But I guess that's
26 years, but everyone, unfortunately, we, as a Sheffield Wednesday, you feel like that's where the club should be, and that's kind of always been around. That's that you just can't get away from that sort of feeling. For fans my generation, obviously, there's some fans who don't ever know that, haven't ever known that.
But that's the thing, isn't it? Those clubs that you talk about, sort of your Brightons and your Brentfords and things, like they did start that process from a really low cost base. So they started that process in League One and League Two and kind of built organically. And I sometimes think that, that in a way, coming straight back to, not straight back, but coming back to the Championship, it really just, is there an argument that you need a bit of time out just to kind of, because what that did was those Championship costs just came back.
Yeah.
And then hurt the club again and stop the money being poured into the places where it was needed, behind the scenes and all those sorts of things. And as awful as it sounds, it feels to me that you could almost do with a couple of seasons out of that environment where all the money goes on wages, all the money goes on players, just to get the club in order.
Yeah, but there needs to be major sort of infrastructure, throughout the club. Generally, training ground needs investment. The stadium needs investment, which is one of the, going to be one of the biggest potential issues as well. All the money that kind of needs to go in. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it can't just keep come and just throw money at it. But you know what fans are like and what football clubs are like, and when it comes on a Saturday, you want to win. And when Sheffield Wednesday are playing next year, they're going to be seen as a big scalp again. And then they've been down there and taken massive beatings from Leyton Orients and Stevenages and things like that. It's not actually unfamiliar territory when clubs that Wednesday fans think they should be beaten, but actually they're being run much better. So that's why they were losing to them kind of clubs that it is a big football club, and that expectation on the fan base is just always going to be there because so many people remember always so desperate to kind of get to not that the Premier League's necessarily what it's cracked up to be. I think these days, I think you can get up there and it's not a lot of fun, but it's that kind of natural thing in an expectant fan base. It's always going to be an expectant fan base.
Yeah,
hard to not be.
Yeah,
but yeah, it does. Yeah, I think there does. Yeah, there needs to be a complete. But there was no structure in place. There was no, like normal hierarchy and things that were kind of done. As in, there's clubs in non-league football who had better structures than Sheffield Wednesday. Right down non-league football, much better run. That's been one of the main issues in this day and age when other clubs are just going to come and surpass you, aren't they?
Yeah, no, exactly.
That potentially makes it trying to get sort of back up again. Potentially, is going to make it slightly more difficult because there's more work there behind the scenes to do than a kind of normal club who's sort of been sort of pottering along and have just fallen through the trapdoor. So it's going to be crucial that these new owners get a grip of things very quickly and work out the correct strategy to go forward and try and get the club sort of moving onwards and upwards. Because as you say, the support base is certainly there for Sheffield Wednesday to be a Premier League club if they're run properly.
Yeah. I just, it's hard not to kind of sort of think forward in your mind about what it could be like and how good it could be. But the problem is, that's such a long time ago. It's like, we will see. I think the concern is how long does this take over? Does it go through? Does the preferred bidder actually, kind of get, there's obviously lots of things there's no reason, I don't know any reason to not think that's sitting here. So, obviously it's going through the whole process now, but how long does that take? Does that have to wait for the independent regulator? That's one of my sort of slight concerns is, if you're the EFL, do you not just kind of wait to the independent regulator to come in and make sure there seems to be dialogue between it? But, they can't get this one. No one can get this one wrong, can they? If this takeover isn't right and it goes wrong, then that's a bad reflection on everybody. That's what so it should be difficult to take over a football club as well, right? It shouldn't be a quick process.
Well, also, I mean, it's Sheffield United can't really afford for this one to go wrong, can they? Because, like you say, that everything.
Well, Sheffield United probably can.
You know what? Years ago, I actually made this mistake. I rang I had a club handbook. This is when I first started on the Football League paper, and I rang up. I think I did remember when it was on Sheffield United. I think it might be the other way around, but I can't remember which way it was. But it was one of you had got relegated. And I rang up and sort of began my conversation by going, commiserations, really sorry about what happened. And I think it was whoever was on the other one was like, well, we're not. It's brilliant.
Well, to be fair, I thought Chris Wilder, after Sunday, he's sort of talking about, that kind of like rivalry and all that sort of thing. And you need that rivalries as well, don't you? Right? So I think that will kind of sort of come back. But
well, yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's all fun and games on the day when they send you down, but I think you want those derbies, don't you? Everybody does. It's like, the longer you go without them, it's a bit miserable. And you want them on a level playing field as well. It's not the same when one's a Premier League club, one's a League One club, and you get each other in the League Cup. You know what I mean? It's just not the same. So you do need each other.
Yeah, and it's not the same. It's not quite the same either when they're in the same division and there's a big, massive gulf between them either. So it's not. Yeah, it's been a bit farcical sort of this season.
Yeah, but like you said at the beginning, John, I think it looked like it was going to get very, very, very ugly, and then as a Wednesday fan, you're obviously really fearing that. What could this be? When it's 2-0 after not very long. But the team, they continue to fight, and I think they sort of deserve a lot of respect for that as well. They really do kind of battle and work hard. They're not getting their rewards necessarily. I think Chris Wilder kind of said after this, the team is miles off where it needs to be in so many different areas, but at least they are out there kind of fighting. And hopefully after this, a lot of these players will, whether it's at Sheffield Wednesday or elsewhere, are going to have really good careers. There's a lot of young lads who've been sort of thrown in and have flourished, and I think that's been a positive as well. So we will see. I think the target obviously is to get into plus points and not go down with minus points. We'll see. It's obviously asking for almost over half the points I've already got again, isn't it? Basically, so noisy. What do you make of the Kalvin Phillips setting off?
Oh, it was a nasty one, wasn't it? It's hard to sort of work out what he was thinking, really, because it's one of those. I think if you, on the face of it, you can go, well, you just misjudged it and followed through when he was clearing the ball. But I think if you've played, you ask any ex-player, and they'll all tell you that was a nasty challenge. It didn't need to happen. So it's just a weird one. Like I think what you could say from it's clearly like an impulsive decision. It's like an instinct he almost has at the time. But I mean, it's a red card all day long. It's just you've sort of got to. I've done the column on Kalvin Phillips this week, and you've almost got to feel sorry for him in a way. I know that sounds strange after he's just sort of smashed in a leg breaker on someone, but he got sent off in this loan spell. He got sent off in his loan spell at Ipswich. He got sent off at West Ham, and you just sort of wonder if deep down there's just it's the frustration and the anger at kind of what's happened in his career, slightly just sort of coming out in a subconscious way. But it's like I say, he's just got to sort of. It's the last thing he needed because the scrutiny on him and what's happened to him. It was absolutely the last thing he needed. So. Yeah, just needs to get his kind of head down, come back after his 3 games and kind of just try and stay out of trouble, really.
Yeah, John, I think they kind of talked about it on Sky Sports coverage when they were talking to Chris Wilder after the game. I think Michael Brown kind of said it, feels that when we've talked about it on here as well, Michael Brown kind of saying it was like Chris Wilder is kind of that perfect manager maybe for Kalvin Phillips to, yes, he's going to be missing some games now, but, someone like him who kind of is so experienced, has been around the block at all levels, and really great manager can hopefully kind of help Kalvin Phillips get back to that best. And he's the perfect person for him now, while he'd probably be feeling a bit down after Sunday's red card.
Yeah, and we had a column from Simon Grayson a few weeks ago, pretty much sort of saying exactly the same thing, that he felt Sheffield United with Chris Wilder there would be the perfect place for him to sort of revitalise his career and obviously get some games under his belt and start enjoying his football again. So this is a bit of a hammer blow. I mean, we've all seen the tackle, and it doesn't look great. However many times you look at it. So yeah, it was a real shame, on the day, and fingers crossed I think he's going to have a couple of weeks off now, isn't he, without being able to play. So hopefully he can get his head together and come back and help Sheffield United in that final push for the end of the season, where they, if they could go on a great run, they might have an outside chance of the players, but obviously they would have to come through a ginormous pack to do it.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of traffic between everyone in the playoffs at the minute. Obviously, games this week. Coventry had a good little period. Obviously, good win against West Brom on Saturday. 9 points clear again after that result. Probably feeling a bit happier at the Sky Blues again.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? The way it's just suddenly you know, it sort of that points gap got eroded and eroded and eroded so slowly, and then in the space of a week, it's back.
It's like, it's totally fine. It's like, oh no, it's all going wrong. Oh no, actually, turns out it's all right.
Yeah, and I guess
we're after the good side.
And you know, it's boring, isn't it? When people talk about you hear it so much when people talk about this sort of the championship and anyone can beat anybody. It's such a massive cliche, but it is that thing of just because you have the 3 games in a week as well. I can't, you know, what you lose in 2 months, you can gain in a week, and it really is sort of that sort of division. And you just wonder now whether that's like, well, I mean, we said it, didn't we? On the you know, on here we said it that everybody has the bad patch. Everybody has a few results, and maybe that was Coventry's, and that was it. You know, and maybe now because we said they strengthened in January. They bought a lot of players. They've strengthened the squad. They beat Middlesbrough comprehensively, which was massive psychologically, I would think. So, yeah, you wonder now whether they'll just sort of steam off into the distance and it'll go back to being a race for second again.
John, West Brom, not a happy place to be at the minute.
No, and obviously there was a bit of talk on Saturday afternoon after that game about Eric Ramsey and, you know, whether he was going to sort of live to fight another day. So obviously we were keeping sort of tabs on that on Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, just to see if there was any news from West Brom about him, but, you know, about him going. But obviously that didn't come to pass. But yeah, I mean, it's looking bleak. I think it's 8 games that he's had that they haven't had a win. So it's been a bit of a nightmare situation for him after following sort of Ryan Mason, and you know they're going to have to dig out you know, a result this week. Otherwise, I think you know, they'll probably try and, you know, look for someone else. So it's going to be a crucial time for him. But you know, as for Coventry, in that game the other day, that, you know, that was just what they needed to back that Middlesbrough win up, and to have like a 9-point gap to you know, to third place was probably more than they could have wished for at this stage. And got to give credit, I suppose, to Oxford as well for going to Middlesbrough and getting a goalless draw there as well, because obviously a couple of weeks earlier they'd done the same thing to Coventry. So sort of some swings and roundabouts in some ways, but yeah, it's looking a lot rosier for Coventry on the back of those couple of wins. And you know, you see Frank Lampard will want to keep their foot on the gas now and just keep that gap growing.
Yeah, I think it's incredible how directly linked the championship results are to my EFL fantasy decisions and players I put in. Millwall being one of them. Obviously, a great win for Portsmouth, Chris, winning 3-1 against Millwall. Obviously, we've been flying this year, but the backfired on my EFL fantasy selections, that's for sure.
Yes, mine as well, because I had Kramer in defence. Did you have him? I think you did, didn't you?
Yeah. We sort of scarily picked so many similar players. I think it's sort of like quite clearly show we have brilliant minds or not, but we seem to have the same sort of thinking. But yes, I did.
So, in fairness, like, you know, I think probably we both should have realised that Portsmouth have actually been quite a bit better recently. So it's probably not. I mean, you know, to go there and win 3-1 is definitely a surprise, but they have been playing pretty well. And yeah, it's like all of a sudden, you know, you had this sort of really, really tight relegation battle. And there was a few teams, you know, there was earlier in the season, Portsmouth, you know, couldn't buy a win, really struggling for goals. Then you had Blackburn, who just tumbled in free fall. And then all of a sudden, they've got a couple of results they've picked up. And you're suddenly looking at a division where you've got Leicester and West Brom as 2 of the bottom 4 teams, and they're at least 2 wins away from sort of pulling out of those positions. And yeah, I just, you know, I do wonder in these situations whether, you know, the clubs like Portsmouth, this is their existence. You know, I've said this before. This is their life. They're down there all season. They know they're going to get beat every now and then. They just scrap away and try and get the results. And you do wonder whether, you know, teams like Leicester and West Brom have got the players and the kind of mentality to scrap that way, to kind of, you know, get out, you know, to shrug off the defeats and keep going. And yeah, you look at those sides, and Leicester, you know, they drew 2-2 at the weekend, didn't they? Were under Gary Rowett, unlucky not to win because, you know, Stoke equalised in the death. But They should have, on paper, you'd say they've got the quality to pull out of it. They should certainly pull out of it, but you just never know. And it's West Brom the same. They've been losing and losing and losing now for so long, and you can't just flip that round. So you do worry for the pair of them, really.
Yeah, John, do you think that kind of extends to the fans as well? As Chris was saying, Portsmouth, probably the fans probably thought actually this might be a bit of a tricky. We'll have tricky spells this season. Get behind our players. Whereas Leicester fans are probably thinking at the start, not expecting this. Obviously, the points deduction kind of hasn't helped, so they'll be feeling they're kind of better than they are, but they're still, only 6 points kind of better off, and that can really sort of creep into things as well, can't it? When the fans can get really, really, rightly early on in games with it, it's not quite going their way and things like that.
Yeah, and to be fair to the Leicester fans, they would have had expectations. Their side was going to be, right up there this season. So I've got every sympathy with them, because it's been a bit of a nightmare, hasn't it? The other point that I think you've just touched on there is obviously they have had that 6-point deduction, which they have now appealed against, which has kind of put a little bit of a dampener on things down the bottom of the table, because no one really knows until that appeal's heard. No one really knows exactly where they stand and what they need. So let's hope that appeal does get sort of solved, sooner rather than later, because no one wants to be going into the last weeks of the season not knowing, what points tally or how many points they're going to need to sort of get safe.
Yeah, I do wonder when because there was a lot of talk of sort of 9 and 12 points and stuff, wasn't there, in the season? And I did sort of wonder if the Football League whether that sort of 6 points had almost been imposed to make Leicester go away. You know what I mean? Whether they're just here's 6 points, it's not as bad as it could be. Just keep quiet now, accept the punishment. And I imagine this is the exact situation they were trying to avoid when they did that.
And I guess
they were just going to say they were just probably hoping that Leicester wouldn't have bombed out in their recent games to obviously to get in that sort of situation. So now the thing's a bit of a mess, because Leicester are down there in the relegation zone and desperate for points, and those 6 points that they've had deducted, which I think most people did sort of think that was a pretty reasonable punishment for their offences. You sort of think on the appeal, how many of those points are they going to get back? Maybe they're going to get 2 or 3 points back, but then again, those 2 or 3 points could be the pivotal points at the end of the day.
Yeah, they've proved that in the past.
And do you think also the other thing, like you're saying, when others are down there and winning as well, look at Blackburn getting that late winner against Preston, that's kind of, you're like, oh god, we're not winning now. The points are up, and then the others are winning as well. Norwich have kind of sort of, started tearing up the table. Now they didn't win at the weekend, but it does, that sort of compounds it as well. And imagine Blackburn fans were probably enjoying their weekend as it was, but then for others around them to do that as well must made it even better for them, kind of thing.
No, exactly. That's it. It's all like sort of mind games at this point in the season as well, isn't it? So it's like I say, it's if they can sort of wrap their heads around the situation, that both West Brom and Leicester have obviously got the quality to get out of it. But that's what it is. It will be the sort of getting their heads around the fact that they're in a relegation battle, I think.
Yeah, John, probably. Sorry, just going to say there, probably. On just on Gary Rowett, if Gary Rowett can't get them up for a fight in a battle and get them out of this, situation they're in, then I don't know who can really, because with all his experience he's got, you'd have thought he's just the right person to go in there, get them organised, get them set up, and then let their attacking players go out and do the business and score some goals.
Yeah,
you sort of feel they'll be right. John, was the biggest weekend win of the weekend Wrexham beating Ipswich 5-3?
Well, it's got to be right up there. I think there's one or two other contenders we might maybe come on to later, but probably certainly in the in the Championship, that was a pretty phenomenal result, wasn't it? Because once you'd heard Ipswich had gone sort of 3-2 up, you sort of thought, well, Wrexham probably be lucky to get a draw out of it. So to go and score 3, because you don't expect a Kieran McKenna team to sort of let some of those goals in and to concede 5. That was, quite remarkable. Another crazy game for the Wrexham Annals there. So they're up to 6 now, aren't they? And flying. So they've got a lot of momentum, and obviously Birmingham, who came up with them last season, are right on their tails as well. So it's shaping up to be, it's going to be a pretty exciting running.
Mm-hmm. Maybe just a quick one on Birmingham, Chris, because wasn't that all long ago? It doesn't feel like people were sort of saying Christo's the right man, it's not quite going very well. And is that just show the immediate nature of football and the way everyone thinks so short term? And actually look at them now.
You've got to. In fairness, I've been one of the people to criticise the Birmingham owners in the past. When they appointed Rooney and for maybe sort of setting the sights a little bit too high too quickly. But I think they do, they deserve sort of, due respect for this, because it would have been easy, wouldn't it? It would have been easy to get rid of Davies when they were struggling and when they were sort of, they sank quite a way off the playoffs for a bit and they'd lost a few games. And yeah, it would have been easy. And I think there was a lot of talk around it, but they didn't. And yeah, now they're right up there, challenging for the playoffs, scoring goals again. They're strengthened in January, which they were always going to do. And yeah, I think probably you look at them squad wise, is it a top 6 squad? Probably. Certainly, if it isn't this season, it will be next season. And yeah, I mean, you wouldn't. They have got that depth, and at this point in the season, it's a bit like Wrexham as well. They've got the depth, they've got quality for quality all over the pitch. And at this stage in the season, I think that's what you start to see the table form in that way, where the teams with the money and the depth in the squad, they all just start moving up. You're seeing Preston just drop, aren't you? Seeing sort of Watford go down a little bit, and all those teams who were sort of pretenders to the throne almost, and the people with the money in the squad are getting there. So yeah, I'll definitely not write Birmingham off.
Let's have a look at League One, because I think one of the other results across the whole of EFL on Saturday, John, was Plymouth beating Cardiff 5-2 again. Another one we all predicted. Plymouth sort of rising up that table as well. Again, Tom Cleverley was under a lot of heat earlier on in the season, wasn't he? And suddenly you think, actually, you're not all that far off. There's still a little way to go, but what a win that was against Cardiff. If you're going to sort of go out and not only beat a team who are flying at the top and sort of kind of look nailed on for promotion, but to go and smash them 5-2 is a great result.
Yeah, because they were obviously two of the clubs that sort of came down last season, and Cardiff sort of thrashed Plymouth 4-0 earlier in the season, and I was fortunate enough to go along and see Plymouth at Leyton Orient last week in midweek, and they were very impressive. They're scoring a lot of goals at the moment. They've got some forward players there in top form. Ben Pebble sort of hitting his straps now. He's on a really good scoring run. Laurent Tolai is back from injury, and he got another couple. He's up to 14 for the season. Ronan Curtis has been another good addition, and another player they got from Port Vale who's come in. He's got that that technique and quality. He's a top performer at League One level. So they've got some really good attacking threats. I think what we were sort of talking about on Tuesday night was the fact that Plymouth had probably one of the top away records in the division. But their home form hadn't really sort of been anywhere near that, and I think probably what did help a little bit on the Saturday was that probably Cardiff came out to play and sort of play toe to toe with them, because I think what Tom was basically saying after the game on Tuesday night was that they have had a little bit of a problem when teams have come down to home park and just tried to sit in. They haven't sometimes had the creativity to open those kind of teams up, whereas they've had a bit more room to play when they've been away, because the home team have had to come out, try and take the initiative and take the game. So to get that thumping home win against Cardiff's going to give them should give them a truckload of confidence, and they're hitting 5s and 4s and 3s every week at the moment. So sort of momentum is certainly with them. Whether they whether they can sort of overcome that terrible start they had when they were, down the bottom of the table in November, might still be a bridge too far. But they've got a chance. They've also got, obviously, we're doing this on Tuesday. They've got a big game tonight at Luton in the trophy quarterfinals as well. So as we're sort of doing this now, they're fighting on two fronts as well. So it's exciting times for them.
Yeah, Chris, 6 points off the playoffs as it stands. If you're going to get good and get into good form, this is the time to do it, isn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly, and I think they've always had the players, haven't they? I think that awful start was probably a bit of a hangover from the relegation, a bit mystifying, really. But they always had the squad to challenge. So I think if you had to pick somebody out with that chasing pack right now, it would probably be them. It looked like Peterborough, didn't it, a couple of weeks ago? But they've just sort of faltered a little bit. But yeah, I think if you had to pick anybody out with there, because Luton are on in great form, Peterborough have fallen away. A lot of the other clubs have sort of dipped a bit, like Stevenage. So yeah, I think if you had to pick anyone out of that pack, it would be them to gate crash it.
Mm-hmm. John, it was a good week for you in FLP editorial-wise last week. So you say you went to that game, and Plymouth didn't. Normally we sort of have a bit of a joke in the office about the pieces we do in the week and what kind of happens on the Saturday results, and those news and feature pages are already on their way to the printers by the time the results start rolling in. But so Plymouth did you a favour in one of your biggest risks to do a nice big piece with them before they played Cardiff, but then also. Don Ballard, Leyton Orient, scored again as well, didn't he? And he's big win for the O's. Against
I mean that was against Northampton at the weekend, because obviously when I went to the game on Tuesday, I thought it'd be good to keep tabs on Dom and just see what he's like, because it's always good to see players in the flesh and just get a real feel for what they can do. I was impressed with him against Plymouth, even though he didn't score, because you could see the movement, the runs that he was making. Leyton Orient had a big revamp in January, and I think Richie Wellens was saying they brought 9 in and 9 went out, so it was a big squad overhaul. I kind of got the feeling against Plymouth that sometimes Don Ballard was making runs, and I thought he was making good runs. And people weren't looking to him; they weren't getting the ball to him enough. And I could understand it, his frustration at times that the ball wasn't coming. So then, obviously on Saturday, he scored his 16th of the season, and it was a little high ball, and he's chested it down well and stuck it away. So it was an impressive finish, and he does look like a really shrewd signing for them. Obviously, they got him in from Southampton. He'd been in the Southampton academy for a decade or so. So he looks as though he's been a really good signing. Definitely want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Chris, it's tight down at that bottom, isn't it? That's a big win for them. Obviously, again, maybe a season they weren't expecting after sort of the highs of last year.
Yeah, I think it's like what we said about before. We're Leyton Orient, though. It's that last season was a massive overachievement because they sort of lose all the players on an annual basis. So I think they're always prepared that they might struggle. But yeah, it's mega tight down there because. I mean, I think obviously we can write Port Vale off. Sadly, even though I spoke to John Brady a few weeks ago, and he's a nice guy, but I think he's probably preparing for League Two. And then Rotherham down there. Who'd have thought that? Season, because they're sort of still, they lost again. That's three defeats in a row for them, and I think they're still really paying for the that when Paul Warne left and Matt Taylor came in and they kind of revamped the squad, and that was 3 years ago now. And I think really they tried to turn themselves into a kind of footballing side and made an absolute horlicks of it, and kind of got players who weren't they tried to be a footballing side on the lowest budget in the Championship, and I think they're still kind of paying the price for. Almost taking that Rotherham DNA out of the side with all the players they had, and they're still playing catch up all this time later. So, and I struggle to see them. that's really, the form's been so bad for so long. I struggle to see them getting out of it. But yeah, but as for the rest, I think it's, I think probably you're looking at between Blackpool, Leyton Orient, Burton, Wigan, and Northampton now, and it's going to be tight right up until the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. Let's go and have a look at the bottom of League Two. And Chris, I know you spoke to Gavin Cowan a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, new manager at Shrewsbury. We all kind of like the story of the hometown boy going back to his club, and that kind of what that meant to him to be able to take charge. He's obviously down there watching games around it when he wasn't in overseeing Brackley games, where he did a great job there and got them promoted into the National League. But then to go and win 4 in a row, that's kind of, I think if there was any kind of little doubters, naysayers at the beginning when he sort of first got the job, he's shut a few up there, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, it's amazing what they've done. Yeah, like when you think how quickly he's gone in there and turned it around. But he was very, when you spoke to Gavin, and I spoke to him, the other stuff he'd done. He was what really struck us was just sort of how confident he was. And I know you've got to be as a manager, haven't you? You've got to sort of project that. But I did feel he was just like absolutely certain that he could. With a few sort of basic principles and a bit of organisation, you could get them turned around, and that's exactly what he's done, really. And when you think about they've beaten Swindon, they've beaten Notts County, obviously the Barrow and Accrington games were impressive as well. But yeah, to beat those teams is very, very impressive. And yeah, like I say, I think it just came across, and I'm sure if that came across to me, I can just imagine being in the dressing room with those players when he came in. And to see someone, just clearly who believed in himself, who kind of believed in them and what he was doing, I'm sure it must have had a massive impact, and it clearly has. Yeah,
very, very, very positive person, and kind of that comes across whenever you interview him. But John, it's amazing, isn't it? Though how, like I say, a few wins in a row, and suddenly everything feels so much better. And to get those 12 points there is just obviously. Still work to do, but to kind of put themselves 9 points above that sort of dreaded line must feel much better waking up as a Shrewsbury fan at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know the exact dates, but I think people were saying it's the first time they've won 4 on the trot for about 3 years. So yeah, for him to go in there and get those wins pretty much straight away is, considering the season they've had, has been sort of quite remarkable. And obviously it shines a good light on the National League as well, and non-league matters, obviously, which you cover week in, week out. So sometimes we can write managers off in, so he's just a non-league manager, so that's the National League manager. But there's obviously there's obviously a lot of talented people working in those divisions who are waiting to get that opportunity, and sometimes for a bit of snobbery or whatever, it doesn't come around. So fair play to Shrewsbury in the situation that they were in, that they've gone and got him in for Brackley, because might be a few people sort of scratching their heads at the time, but they obviously can understand why now that they did go for him, because they look as though they've kind of pulled clear now, and you wouldn't expect them to sort of end up back in that melee at the bottom. But it's sort of shaping up quite interesting now, because you do get to this stage of the season where you suddenly sometimes start seeing some crazy results when teams are a bit desperate, start pulling rabbits out of the hat. It's going to be some more. I'm sure there'll be going to be more unpredictable results and more head scratchers before the end of the season.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? So I think, as I said before, I saw them Shrewsbury at Cambridge a few weeks ago, which was Mike Appleton's last game. And I think, in a parallel universe, that game is still being played and they still haven't scored, because they didn't ever look like they were going to. But four wins in a row is not too bad. I'll tell you what, Chris, they win 5 in a row, you have to get your hair cut like old Man United fan. They're in 5 games in a row. But there's a few others winning down there as well. Bristol Rovers did. That's we talked about Steve Evans and kind of what we expected him to kind of do. Yeah, Cheltenham and Steve Cotterill kind of putting themselves up there as well. As we say, lots to do. Some of them got games in hand on the others, but we kind of looking, maybe at that at that bottom four where it is at the minute. Obviously, they don't want to let Bristol Rovers and Cheltenham gallop off and Shrewsbury gallop off too much. But the way it is at the minute, obviously, Crawley, Barrow, Harrogate, Newport separated by 4 points down there. Obviously, Harrogate have they've had a good last four results, and a couple of wins in there, including beating Cambridge United as well, obviously on that flying run. So they're probably feeling a bit more positive as well. But it is bunched up down at that bottom, and obviously we know there's only two places to fill at the end of the year for now. If we see what happens with 3 up, 3 down the line, but is that kind of how you're looking at it, Chris? Move sort of from that sort of group there.
Yeah, I think so. I would sort of struggle to look much beyond that now because, I mean, like I say, Bristol Rovers, we've said as soon as Evans went in, we expected him to get it right. It's probably taken a bit longer than he expected. And he had a little pop of the recruitment and stuff the other day, didn't he? But I think, with the players they've got, with Steve in charge, I can't see them getting dragged back into it. Cheltenham are away and gone. Shrewsbury are away and gone. Harrogate, Newport for me. I wouldn't want to hang me hat on any of them. I think it's you'd struggle to make a case for Newport purely because they've literally been in that bottom two for practically the entire season. Like you say, Harrogate are the sort of the form team of the lot of them. But yeah, I think it'd be very, very tough between the four of them.
John, Harrogate haven't had a good little run there. They obviously made quite a few changes in January. And Simon Weaver obviously kind of knows what he's battling against, but just to keep them up again would be a great achievement. But they've given themselves that little bit of extra hope now.
Yeah, I think their sort of confidence and morale must have risen quite a lot over the last 2 or 3 weeks. They did make those signings in January and strengthen the squad, and it does seem to sort of paid sort of dividends now. They've become a lot harder to break down, and to get to beat Cambridge, to get a good home draw against Bromley at the top of the table. That's going to give them a real shot in the arm. So that the feeling is that they have sort of started to sort of turn that corner. So yeah, they'll be feeling a lot more optimistic about themselves. Obviously, we had a column with Graham Wesley in the paper on the Sunday, and he was talking about his old mucker Dino Marmaria sort of taking over at Barrow. I think Graham's confident. We're extremely confident that Dino will sort of get them out of trouble. He had a win on it, obviously his first game, and they've had a couple of setbacks since, and it was a real kick in the teeth when they conceded the lead that they had against Fleetwood at the weekend, especially losing it sort of late on as well. So that was a hammer blow, and he's going to have to use his sort of powers of motivation to sort of turn them sort of back round. Crawley have obviously brought back Scott Lindsay's brought back a lot of promotion winners there, and they scrambled a late point at the weekend, which should probably give them a little bit of a lift as well. So yeah, it's all to play for there, and obviously those teams really are desperate now, and they are starting to pull out some results. I mean, Newport obviously went to Salford last midweek and got a great 3-1 win as well. So they're all showing that they can sort of produce some results. So it does look as though it wouldn't be any great surprise if it went down to the wire.
This is, as you say, the time of year where those bonkers results start flying in. Excuse me. And I always think, you get that often. How often do you see it where they all win down there and things like that, and they come off the pitch thinking, "Oh, we've got that win. What a relief! That's brilliant." Come in, look at the phones or on the sort of results coming in, and think, "Oh God, everyone else has won as well." And that, how often does that happen? I mean, Chris, you've spoken to Dino Marmaria many a time. I've interviewed him as well. He's always a great chat, and as John says, a very, very positive person as well. Kind of makes you. I kind of feel like you could have a Dino Marmaria sort of little voice note every morning would get you pumped up for the day.
I mean, if you think Gavin Cowan believes in himself, then Dino's next level, isn't he? Years ago, he won the Manager of the Year award on the non-league paper after the National Game Awards because he kept Northwich Victoria in the conference when they've been. This sort of very, very similar situation to Sheffield Wednesday.
Which deductions?
I think he basically talked his way into the Manager of the Year award. for a few weeks.
This is before my time on the non-league paper, so yeah, sort of.
But yeah, so he's like I say, he believes in himself. He knows what he's doing, and he's actually got a very good record of keeping teams sort of afloat. He did it at Burton very successfully against the odds. And again, he did it at Northwich. He's done it. He went in at Oldham and did a solid job there. He's actually, as a firefighter, he's a very good manager.
Imagine him having to mark Dino Marmira in his playing days, though. My God, that must have been an absolute nightmare.
I've heard a few tales from defenders who did, and how he never stopped.
We've seen that clip. There's a clip out there somewhere where it's got, you talk about Kalvin Phillips' tackle. There's a clip out there somewhere. I think it's like sort of like basically jumps on. I don't know who he's playing against. I think he's playing for. I think it's against Russian and Diamonds Work. Yeah, and it's based on one of the worst challenges you've ever seen. I don't even think he gets a yellow card for it. But it's on YouTube. Yeah, you got to check it out. Back in the glory conference days. But when you could make sort of waist high 2-footed challenges and things like that. When football was
the centre halves are. I think basically I remember speaking to a couple of centre halves who just said he spent 90 minutes telling them how good he was.
But to be fair, he probably rattled a couple of goals past him as well, so he sort of was backing it.
Exactly.
They were the days of the conference back then. None of this pretty splitting centre halves and all this sort of stuff. Proper game. Chaps, we'll leave it there. We've covered a lot, and appreciate your time. I know you're both very busy getting the paper together. I know it's early in the week, but the paper together, obviously, as we said, action-packed fixture schedule tonight and tomorrow. So make sure you pick up your FLP, your Football League paper, on Sunday in newsagents, or subscribe. Make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast, and any nice comments, we like to read those as well. So drop a comment in down below as well, and we look forward to seeing all the things we've talked about, how everything goes the other way tonight and tomorrow, and how we clearly sort of jinxing a few after this chat, I'm sure. But appreciate your time, chaps, and we will catch you next week.